Part 1. The Quiet Exodus. The chamber was silent except for the soft hum of translation devices. Hyunwoo stood at the human podium, his dark suit perfectly pressed, his face showing no emotion. Around him, 17 different alien species sat in their designated sections. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few seemed to glow with their own light. They all stared at him with various expressions that translated to satisfaction or contempt. Counselor Vexthar rose from his seat. He was tall, covered in deep purple scales with 4 arms that he used to gesture dramatically. His voice boomed through the chamber as the translators worked to convert his words into hundreds of languages. The Galactic Council has reached its decision, Vexthar announced. Resolution 4477 is now law. Humanity is hereby restricted to the Sol system. All territorial claims beyond your home system are revoked. Your voting rights are suspended indefinitely. A murmur of approval ran through the chamber. Some aliens clicked their mandibles in what passed for applause. Others simply nodded their various heads in agreement. Vexthar continued, his tone dripping with barely concealed mockery. Your species is too aggressive, too unpredictable. You expand too quickly, and your emotions make you unreliable partners. The council has spoken. You will comply. Hyunwoo remained still. He let the words wash over him without reaction. When the chamber finally quieted, he spoke in a calm, measured tone. We understand, he said simply. Humanity will comply with the council's decision. We will begin withdrawal procedures immediately. Vexthar seemed almost disappointed by the lack of argument. He had expected anger, threats, or at least some pleading. Instead, he got acceptance. He sat down with a grunt. Hyunwoo gathered his small datapad and walked out of the chamber. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. The aliens watched him go, unsure if they should feel victorious or unsettled by how easily humanity had accepted defeat. Within 72 hours, the withdrawal began. On New Busan, a thriving colony in the Kepler 442 system, Governor Ji-won stood in the central square. Around her, 40,000 colonists moved with purpose. There was no panic, no protests, no tears. They simply packed their belongings and boarded the transport ships that arrived in steady streams. Governor, the last agricultural dome is shut down, reported a young officer. All equipment has been left operational and clean. Ji-won nodded. Good. Make sure we leave everything in perfect condition. No sabotage, no mess. Just lock the doors and walk away. Ma'am, some colonists are asking why we can't fight this decision, the officer said quietly. Ji-won looked at the colony she had helped build over 15 years. The building stood clean and ready for new occupants. The farms were harvested and prepped for next season. The power plants hummed with full energy reserves. Because we were invited guests, she said finally, and guests don't trash the house when asked to leave. We'll go quietly. They'll understand what they lost soon enough. Across council space, the pattern repeated. Human mining stations in the asteroid belts went dark. Research facilities in distant nebulas shut down their experiments and departed. Trade ships docked at alien ports, delivered their final cargoes, and jumped back toward Sol without taking on new contracts. The speed of the withdrawal surprised everyone. Humanity had been in council space for 200 years. They had built infrastructure, established trade routes, and integrated into galactic society. Yet in mere weeks, they were gone. Admiral Taeyong commanded the final human freighter convoy. His fleet of 300 massive cargo ships had been the backbone of interstellar commerce. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as his ships prepared for the jump to Sol. Sir, we're receiving priority messages from a dozen council worlds, his communications officer reported. They're begging us to stay, offering increased payment, better contracts, anything we want. Taeyong smiled sadly. Polite decline. Tell them our recall orders are final. Suggest they contact the council for alternative arrangements. They won't find any, will they, sir? No, Taeyong agreed. They won't. But that's not our problem anymore. The jump drives activated and the convoy disappeared in a flash of blue light. Behind them, trade routes that had functioned smoothly for decades began to collapse. Goods piled up at stations with no ships to move them. Alien captains tried to fill the void, but found themselves overwhelmed by the sheer volume of work humans had been quietly handling. On Research Station Prometheus 7, Engineer Minho performed his final checks. The station floated in deep space far from any star system. It had been built to study quantum mechanics and dimensional physics. The research here had led to breakthrough after breakthrough. Minho walked through the empty corridors. Every lab was clean. Every piece of equipment was carefully stored. All the research data remained in the computers, freely accessible. He had left nothing encrypted, nothing locked away. In the main lab, he paused at a console. His fingers moved across the keyboard, typing a final message. Good luck with your future endeavors. Humanity. He scheduled the message to display on the main screen, then walked to the docking bay where his small ship waited. The station's lights remained on, its systems humming. It was ready for whoever came next. As Minho's ship pulled away, he looked back at the station through the viewport. Somewhere in those labs, aliens would find research that was decades ahead of their own. They would find solutions to problems they hadn't even realized existed. They would find warnings about threats they didn't know were coming. Whether they would understand those warnings was another question entirely. Back at the council chambers, trade reports began flowing in. Minister Khaldun, an insectoid alien responsible for commerce, reviewed the numbers with growing alarm. Councillor Vexthar, he said, his mandibles clicking nervously. We have a problem. Human companies operated 40% of our logistics network. Our supply chains are failing. Vexthar waved a dismissive hand. Temporary disruption. Other species will fill the gap. We've survived thousands of years without humans. We'll be fine. But as weeks passed, the problems multiplied. Food shipments arrived late or not at all. Medical supplies ran short on outer colonies. Communication relays began failing without the human technicians who had maintained them. The council held emergency sessions, each one more tense than the last. They passed resolutions to hire more alien workers, to increase shipping capacity, to train technicians. But nothing seemed to work as smoothly as it had when humans were simply there. On the edges of council space, strange readings began appearing. Sensors detected anomalies that didn't match any known phenomena. Ships reported brief moments of spatial distortion. Scientists investigated but found nothing conclusive. The Sentinel network, an early warning system that monitored threats from outside the galaxy, began to malfunction. Error reports multiplied. The Council's technical teams tried to fix it, but the network's complexity baffled them. What they didn't know was that humans had built and maintained most of the Sentinel network. Human engineers had monitored it constantly, making tiny adjustments and repairs. Without them, the network slowly degraded. Without the network, the Council was going blind to what lurked in the dark spaces between galaxies. Hyunwoo received daily reports in his office on Earth. He read each one carefully, his expression never changing. When asked by human officials if they should offer assistance, he simply shook his head. They asked us to leave, he said quietly. We left. What happens next is their choice. In the Sol system, humanity watched and waited. They had not forgotten the Council's dismissal. They had not forgotten Vexithar's mocking tone. But they also hadn't forgotten who they were. The question was whether the Council would remember before it was too late. Part 2. The Council's confidence. 6 months had passed since humanity's departure. The Council chambers looked the same, but the mood had changed considerably. What had started as celebration had turned into concern, though few were willing to admit it openly. Councillor Vexthar sat in his private office reviewing economic reports. The numbers were worse than he expected. Trade efficiency was down 60%. 3 council worlds had reported food shortages. 2 colonies had been evacuated due to failing life support systems that no one knew how to repair. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Minister Khaldun entered without waiting for permission, which was unusual. The insectoid alien's normally green carapace had taken on a sickly yellow tinge. We have a crisis, Khaldun said bluntly. The shipping situation is not improving. It's getting worse. 70% of interstellar freight was managed by human corporations. We thought other species could replace them. We were wrong. Vexthar set down his datapad. Elaborate. Human logistics companies didn't just move cargo. They designed the routes, managed the schedules, maintained the stations. They built artificial intelligence systems that coordinated everything. Those AI systems are now refusing commands from our operators. Why would AI refuse commands? Vexthar demanded. We don't know. Human programming methods are different from ours. The AI seems to require something in the command structure that only humans can provide. We've tried everything. The systems just won't work for us. Vexthar felt a cold sensation in his stomach. What about the shipments in progress? Admiral Taeyong is making final deliveries now. After that, we're on our own. Khaldun's mandibles clicked anxiously. 13 worlds are facing critical supply shortages within 3 months. We don't have enough ships or trained crews to cover even half the necessary routes. Before Vexthar could respond, another urgent message arrived. This one was from General Nari of the Human Defense Forces. She had requested a final meeting with the Council's military liaison before humanity's complete withdrawal from military coordination. The meeting took place in a secure conference room. General Nari stood before a holographic display showing the Sentinel network. The network was a massive array of sensors and early warning systems positioned at the edges of Council space, monitoring for threats from outside their galaxy. I'm here to inform you that humanity will no longer maintain the Sentinel network, Nari said formally. Her uniform was crisp, her posture military perfect. We built 70% of the network over the past century. We've been monitoring it constantly, making repairs and updating the systems. The Council's military commander, a large reptilian named Gorthak, waved dismissively. We have capable engineers. We'll maintain it ourselves, Nari didn't argue. She simply brought up another display. These are the maintenance logs for the past month. The network requires 17,000 micro-adjustments daily. You'll need teams monitoring it around the clock. The systems are highly sensitive to dimensional fluctuations and quantum anomalies. Gorthak barely glanced at the data. We understand our own technology, General. The network isn't your technology, Nari said quietly. It's ours. We built it, we designed it, and we've been keeping it running. But as requested, we're leaving. These are the access codes and operational manuals. She transmitted a massive data package. Good luck. She left without ceremony. Gorthak assigned a team to take over network maintenance, confident they could handle it. Within 2 weeks, error reports began flooding in. Within a month, entire sections of the network went dark. Within 3 months, the Sentinel network was effectively blind. Meanwhile, on the abandoned research station Prometheus 7, a Council science team arrived to investigate what humans had left behind. Research Director Do-hyun had managed this facility before evacuation. The team expected to find basic research, perhaps some moderately advanced studies. What they found shocked them. The station contained research on quantum tunneling that was decades ahead of current Council understanding. There were working prototypes of dimensional scanners that shouldn't be theoretically possible. Most disturbing were the files labeled Dimensional Incursion Prevention. The head scientist, a crystalline being named Krystal, read through the files with growing horror. According to the research, humanity had detected threats from parallel dimensions. They had been actively fighting to prevent these threats from entering normal space. They had been doing this for decades and they had never told the Council. Why wouldn't they share this information? One of the researchers asked. Krystal examined the logs more carefully. They tried, look here. 5 separate reports submitted to the Council Science Division over the past 20 years, all marked as unverified and low priority. The team fell silent. The Council had ignored humanity's warnings. Now humanity was gone, and whatever they had been protecting against was no longer being held back. On the Ice Moon Series 9, another discovery was being made. A Council exploration team had been cataloging abandoned human facilities when they found something unusual. Deep beneath the surface, in a vault protected by multiple security systems, they found a single console. The console was simple. It had one large red button in the center. Above the button, text appeared in 17 languages, including every Council member species' native tongue. Emergency recall only, do not activate. The team leader, an amphibious alien named Keldor, approached cautiously. The console appeared to be connected to some kind of network, but its purpose was unclear. There was no other information, no explanation, just the warning. What do you think it does? One of his subordinates asked. Unknown. But humans left warnings in multiple languages. They wanted to make sure whoever found this understood not to touch it. They reported the find to the Council. A team of scientists was dispatched to study the device. They spent weeks analyzing it, running scans, trying to determine its function. The button was connected to a galaxy-wide transmitter, but what it transmitted or why was a mystery. Historian Yunji had left detailed logs in the facility. The logs contained warnings written in careful, clear language. She described the button as a last resort, something that should never be activated under any circumstances, but she never explained exactly what it did, perhaps assuming that the warning itself would be sufficient. The Council's science team presented their findings. "We believe it's some kind of communication device," the lead scientist reported, "but we cannot determine who or what it's meant to contact." The humans were deliberately vague in their warnings. Vexthar reviewed the report in his office. More warnings from humans. More mysteries. Part of him wondered if all of this was deliberate, a way to make the Council doubt their decision. But a larger part of him was beginning to genuinely worry. Trade was collapsing. The military early warning system was blind. Strange readings were appearing at the borders, and humans had left behind technology and warnings that the Council didn't fully understand. For the first time since Resolution 4477 passed, Vexthar questioned whether they had made the right choice. On Earth, in a secure government facility, Chief Engineer Suho sat at his workstation monitoring various systems throughout former human territory. Most had been shut down or left in standby mode, but certain systems remained active, hidden from casual detection. One screen showed the status of the mysterious button on Series 9. The Council had found it, just as Suho knew they would. They were studying it, analyzing it, trying to understand it. A younger engineer approached. "Sir, should we send them more information about the button? They don't seem to understand the danger." Suho shook his head slowly. "We left 17 languages worth of warnings. We left detailed logs. We explained that it should never be activated. If that's not enough..." He trailed off, leaving the thought unfinished. What if they press it? Suho's expression was grim. Then they'll learn very quickly why we told them not to. Across the galaxy, the first colony disappeared. It was a small outpost, only 5,000 inhabitants. One day it was there, reporting normal status. The next day, silence. When rescue ships arrived, they found the colony completely empty. No bodies, no signs of struggle, no explanation, just empty buildings and an eerie quiet. The Council investigated but found no answers. They attributed it to equipment failure, or perhaps a mass evacuation, though neither explanation made sense. 3 more colonies disappeared over the following weeks. Each time the same pattern. Normal one day, silent the next, empty when investigators arrived. The strange readings at the borders of Council space were increasing. Ships reported gravitational anomalies that shouldn't exist. Sensors detected energy signatures that didn't match any known phenomena, and with the Sentinel network dark, no one knew what was coming. In the Council chambers, emergency sessions became daily occurrences. The mood of celebration from 6 months ago had vanished completely, replaced by barely contained panic. "We need to contact humanity," Minister Khaldun said during one session. "We need their help." "Absolutely not," Vexthar snapped. "We made our decision. We'll handle these problems ourselves. Humanity isn't special. We survived for millennia before them. We'll adapt." But even as he said the words, Vexthar knew they might be lies. The evidence was mounting. Part 3. The button is pressed 1 year after humanity's departure. The Council faced its darkest hour. 23 colonies had now disappeared without explanation. Trade had collapsed so completely that some worlds were rationing food. The Sentinel network remained dark, and the strange readings at the borders were no longer just readings. Ships were vanishing. The emergency council session was chaotic. Representatives shouted over each other, their translation devices struggling to keep up. Accusations flew. Blame was assigned. Nothing was solved. Councillor Vexthar stood, his forearms raised for silence. The chamber gradually quieted. "We have one option we haven't explored," he said. His voice was steady, but there was desperation underneath. The device humans left on Series 9. Minister Khaldun's mandibles clicked in alarm. "They warned us not to activate it." "They warned us about many things," Vexthar replied. "Perhaps the warnings were designed to keep us from accessing defensive technology. The device is connected to a galaxy-wide network. It might be a weapon system. It might be what we need to stop whatever is attacking our colonies. Or it might be exactly what they warned us it was," Khaldun countered. "Something dangerous." Vexthar looked around the chamber. He saw fear in dozens of different types of eyes. The proud council that had expelled humanity was now terrified and desperate. "We're dying. Our people are disappearing. We need to try something. I call for a vote." The vote was closer than it should have been, but fear won out over caution. The council authorized activation of the device. On Earth, in his monitoring station, Chief Engineer Suho watched his screens in disbelief as the activation signal appeared. "No," he whispered. They couldn't be that stupid. An alarm blared. Other engineers rushed to his station. "Sir, the Series 9 beacon is active." Suho's hands flew across his controls, trying to send an emergency shutdown signal. But the device was designed to resist such attempts. Once activated, it would run its full cycle. His face went pale as the implications hit him. "Get me Ambassador Hyunwoo. Get me President Minji. Get me everyone, now." On Series 9, the button glowed red. The council science team that had been studying it for months scrambled to understand what was happening. The device emitted a pulse that traveled faster than light, spreading across the galaxy in moments. In normal space, nothing changed. But in the spaces between dimensions, something stirred. The void rendered had many names across many cultures. Some called them the things between. Others knew them as the hungry dark. Humanity had simply called them the void rendered because they seemed to tear at the fabric of reality itself. They existed in a parallel dimension, constantly pushing against the barriers that separated universes. For millennia, they had been trying to break through, and for the past 2 centuries, humanity had been fighting them in secret, keeping them contained. The beacon wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a defense system. It was a signal that told the void rendered something critical. The Guardians were gone. It was a dinner bell. Within hours, spatial anomalies began appearing throughout council space. At first they were small, a flicker in the air, a moment where light bent wrong, brief gravitational distortions that made ships shudder, but they grew larger. Battle Station Kepler-19 was the first to encounter the void rendered directly. The station housed 30,000 personnel and served as a key military outpost. Commander Veltrix was reviewing defensive deployments when alarms began screaming throughout the station. "Report," she barked. "Spatial anomaly directly ahead. It's growing." The sensor officer stopped, his voice filled with confusion. "Commander, the sensors don't make sense. The readings are impossible." On the main view screen, space itself seemed to tear open. Through the tear came something that hurt to look at. It had geometry that didn't work in 3 dimensions. It had colors that shouldn't exist. It was both solid and not, both there and nowhere. "Fire all weapons," Veltrix ordered. The station's massive plasma cannons opened fire. The bolts of energy passed through the thing without effect. It moved toward the station, not flying, but simply existing closer than it had been a moment before. The first contact was brief. The void rendered touched the station's hull, and an entire section simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized. It just stopped being there, along with the 3,000 people who had been in that section. Veltrix sent a desperate transmission to the council. "Unknown hostile. Conventional weapons ineffective. Request immediate." The transmission cut off as another section of the station disappeared. The screaming started then. Personnel running through corridors watched reality break down around them. Some saw impossible angles. Others watched their own hands disappear into nothing. The engineering deck reported that the laws of physics were failing. Battle Station Kepler-19's final transmission was simply screaming. Then silence. 30,000 dead in 11 minutes. 5 more stations went dark within a day. Each reported the same thing before communication ceased. Impossible geometry, creatures that broke physics, conventional weapons useless. The void rendered were pouring through rifts that opened across council space. The council military tried to respond. They deployed their fleet, their best ships, their most advanced weapons. Nothing worked. The void rendered existed partially outside normal space. They could be hurt by conventional means, but barely, and they killed everything they touched. Battle reports flooded in. Every engagement ended in disaster. 90% casualties were considered lucky. Most ships were simply erased from existence, their crews gone without even bodies to recover. Panic spread like wildfire. Billions of refugees began fleeing toward the galactic core, hoping distance would save them. Colony after colony fell. Entire worlds went silent. The death count climbed into the billions. In the council chambers, Vexithar stood before his colleagues, his scales pale with stress. "We need to contact humanity," he said, his voice hollow. "We need their help. Will they even respond?" Someone asked. Vexithar didn't know, But they had to try. The transmission was sent to Sol system with priority encoding. This is the Galactic Council requesting immediate assistance. We are under attack by unknown hostile forces. Billions are dying. We need your help. Please respond. For 3 days, silence. Then a single text message came back from Director Youngsu. Checking our records. You voted to expel humanity from Council space effective 1 year ago. Your request is outside our jurisdiction. Please handle this matter internally through appropriate Council channels. The message was cold, formal, and devastating. Humanity was throwing their own words back at them. Vexthar sent another message, less formal this time. Please, we were wrong. We need you. This time Ambassador Hyunwoo responded personally. His face appeared on screen, calm and composed. I remember the day Resolution 4477 passed, he said quietly. I remember being told humanity was too aggressive, too unpredictable, too emotional. I remember watching my people pack up colonies they'd built with their own hands and leave quietly, without protest. Do you remember that day, Counselor? Yes, Vexthar said. We were wrong. I was wrong. You weren't wrong, Hyunwoo replied. You were afraid. You saw humanity's potential and it scared you, so you pushed us away. That's understandable. But now you want us back because you need something from us. Not because you value us, because you need us. Billions are dying. I know. Hyunwoo's expression didn't change. Humanity is watching it happen on our screens. We're receiving your distress calls. We're monitoring your military losses. We know exactly how bad it is, then help us. We're considering it. These things take time. Committees must meet. Votes must be taken. You understand how these processes work. After all, you took time to vote on whether we deserve to stay in Council space. Hyunwoo paused. We'll be in touch. The transmission ended. Vexthar stared at the blank screen. For the first time, he truly understood what humanity must have felt in that council chamber a year ago. The helplessness, the humiliation, the quiet rage of being dismissed. The difference was humanity had left quietly and with dignity. The council was screaming and begging. Another 12 worlds went silent that day. The void rendered were spreading faster now, learning how to use the rifts more effectively. Some could hold their form in normal space for longer periods. They were adapting, evolving, becoming more dangerous. Council military commanders sent increasingly desperate reports. They had nothing that could stop these things. Every battle plan failed. Every defensive position was overrun. The void rendered killed everything they touched, and nothing the Council had could hurt them in return. In the abandoned human research facilities, Council scientists frantically studied what humans had left behind. They found references to specialized weapons, quantum disruptors, dimensional anchors, reality stabilizers. Humanity had built an entire arsenal designed specifically to fight the void rendered, but the weapons required something the aliens didn't have. The technology was coded to human genetic markers. It required human operators. Without humans, the weapons were useless fancy metal. It hadn't been kept secret out of paranoia or mistrust. Human biology was literally the key to making the weapons function. Evolution had given humanity something unique, something the void rendered were vulnerable to, and the Council had expelled them. Part 4. The Price of Pride. 3 months into the invasion, 12 Council worlds were under direct attack. The void rendered had stopped being random appearances and had become an organized assault. They learned quickly. They adapted. And they were winning. The siege of Draxia Prime marked a turning point. The homeworld of Councillor Vexthar, with its 4 billion inhabitants, was surrounded by dimensional rifts. Void rendered poured through in waves, each one tearing at reality itself. The planet's defenses were useless. Weapons passed through the creatures. Shields meant nothing to beings that existed partially outside normal space. Evacuation shuttles launched in desperate streams, packed with refugees. Many didn't make it. Void rendered would appear in mid-flight, and the shuttles would simply cease to exist, gone along with everyone aboard. The lucky ones died instantly. Some unlucky few were pulled partially into the void dimension, their bodies twisted into impossible shapes. Still alive and screaming, Vexthar watched from an evacuation command ship, witnessing his homeworld die. His hands trembled. His scales had lost all color. 4 billion of his people trying to escape, and he knew most wouldn't make it. He made a decision then, one that would cost him everything he had left of his pride. He ordered his ship's communication officer to broadcast across all Council networks, all frequencies, every channel. What he was about to do would be seen by trillions. He didn't care anymore. The broadcast began. Vexthar stood before the camera, and for the first time in the year since humanity's expulsion, he let his true feelings show. Tears streamed down his face. His voice broke. My name is Counselor Vexthar of the Draxian Empire. 1 year ago, I led the vote to expel humanity from Council space. I called them aggressive. I called them unpredictable. I mocked their emotions and their nature. He paused, wiping tears from his eyes. I was wrong. I was a fool. An arrogant, blind fool. The broadcast continued. Billions watched. We ignored their warnings. We dismissed their expertise. We took everything they built and threw them away because we were afraid of them. And now we're paying the price for that fear. My world is dying. Billions will die because of choices I made. Vexthar's voice grew stronger, more desperate. Humanity. If you're watching this, I'm not asking for help because it's politically advantageous. I'm not begging because I need something from you. I'm asking because I was wrong and you were right. About everything. We didn't deserve your patience. We don't deserve your help now. But I'm asking anyway because billions of innocent people are dying for my mistakes. He fell to his knees before the camera, a proud warrior species that never knelt, and their highest counselor was on his knees begging. Please, I'm sorry. We're all sorry. Help us, the broadcast ended. Vexthar remained on his knees, trembling. He had just destroyed his political career, his reputation, everything he had built over decades. He didn't care. His world was dying. On Earth, President Minji watched the broadcast in her office. Around her, humanity's cabinet stood silent. The raw emotion in Vexthar's plea had shaken them all. That wasn't political theater, Intelligence Officer Heejin said quietly. That was genuine. Minji nodded slowly. She had been waiting for this moment, though she hadn't expected it to be so painful to witness. She pressed the intercom. Get me Ambassador Hyunwoo. Tell him it's time. Within the hour, Minji addressed both humanity and the Council in a live broadcast. She stood straight, her expression serious but not cruel. I've just watched Counselor Vexthar's plea, she began. I've watched the reports of Council worlds dying. I've read the casualty numbers. Billions dead, more dying every day, she paused. The Council asked us to leave because they didn't want us. We stayed quiet when we left because they didn't respect us. But we're still human. And humans don't abandon people to die even when those people wronged us. She looked directly into the camera. The human defense fleet is mobilizing. We're coming, not because you deserve it, not because you earned it, but because it's the right thing to do. Because mercy is stronger than vengeance, because we choose who we want to be. The transmission ended. Across Earth and the Sol colonies, sirens began to sound. The mobilization was immediate. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for a year, building and upgrading in secret while the Council fell apart. The human defense fleet began its journey. 3,000 ships emerged from the Sol system, but these weren't the vessels the Council remembered. Admiral Taeyong stood on the bridge of the HDF Indomitable, a dreadnought-class ship of a design the Council had never seen. It was massive, bristling with weapons that hadn't existed a year ago. All ships report ready, his communications officer said. Taeyong nodded. Set course for Draxia Prime, maximum speed. It's time to show them what humanity built while they thought we were hiding in fear. The fleet jumped. Behind them, more ships were being prepared. Earth's shipyards had been working at full capacity for months, building vessels designed specifically to fight the void rendered. Dr. Hana led the weapons development team, creating technology the Council had deemed theoretically impossible. Dimensional cannons are online, she reported from the fleet's science vessel. Reality anchors tested and functional. Quantum net projectors ready for deployment. These weren't conventional weapons. They were designed to fight enemies that existed partially outside normal space. Humanity had been studying the void rendered for 2 centuries, learning their weaknesses, developing counters. While the Council had ignored their warnings, humanity had been preparing for this war. At Draxia Prime, the situation was desperate. Another billion Draxians had been killed or taken by the void rendered. The evacuation was failing. Vexthar stood on the command ship's bridge watching his homeworld burn when the sensors officer shouted, "Jump signatures detected." "Multiple contacts incoming!" Vexthar felt a surge of hope. Reinforcements from the Council fleet? No, sir, the signatures are... They're human. The human defense fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. 3,000 ships of war, each one displaying humanity's colors proudly. They had come. Admiral Taeyong's voice came over open channels. This is the human defense fleet to all Council forces in the Draxia system. We're here to help. Stand down and let us work. The human ships moved into position with practiced precision. This wasn't their first battle against the Void Rendered. They knew exactly what to do. The first Void Rendered to encounter the human ships found itself facing something new. The dimensional cannons fired and the creature screamed. The weapons hurt it in ways Council weapons never could. The Void Rendered tried to phase out of normal space, but the reality anchors held it in place, forcing it to remain where human weapons could reach it. It died. Commander Siok led the first ground assault on Draxia Prime itself. His Marines were equipped with personal reality stabilizers, weapons that could hurt the Void Rendered. They dropped into hot zones where Draxian forces had been wiped out, and they held the line. Push forward, Siok ordered. Protect the evacuation corridors. The battle was fierce. The Void Rendered were dangerous, powerful, and deadly, but for the first time since this nightmare began, they were losing. Human weapons worked. Human tactics were effective. The tide was turning, but it came at a cost. Thousands of human soldiers died in those first battles. The Void Rendered were still deadly even to forces that could fight them. Ships were lost. Ground forces were overrun. The victory was not easy or cheap, yet humanity kept fighting. On the command ship, Vexthar watched in stunned silence as human forces drove back the Void Rendered. His people were being saved by the species he had expelled, the species he had mocked. Sir, his communications officer said quietly, Admiral Taeyong is requesting to speak with you. Taeyong's face appeared on screen. He looked tired but determined. Counselor, we're securing evacuation routes. Get your people off the planet. We'll hold the line. Why? Vexthar asked, his voice breaking. Why are you doing this? After everything we did to you? Taeyong smiled sadly. Because you asked. Because you apologized. Because at the end of the day, Counselor, we're all just people trying to survive in a dangerous universe, and people should help each other, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. The evacuation continued through the night. Human ships held defensive positions while Draxian refugees fled to safety. Billions were saved because humanity chose mercy over vengeance. But the battle for Draxia Prime was just the beginning. 11 more Council worlds needed help. The Void Rendered were still coming through rifts across the galaxy, and humanity was going to have to find a way to seal those rifts permanently, or this war would never end. Part 5. Humanity's Choice. 6 months after the human defense fleet arrived, the war against the Void Rendered had reached a turning point. Humanity had pushed them back from every major Council world. Billions had been saved, but the rifts kept opening and the Void Rendered kept coming. Chief Engineer Suho worked around the clock in his research lab on Earth. He had assembled humanity's best scientists to solve one critical problem: how to seal the rifts permanently. Around him, holographic displays showed rift locations across the galaxy. New ones appeared daily. We're treating symptoms, not the cause, Dr. Hana said, exhaustion clear in her voice. Every rift we seal, 2 more open. The Void Rendered aren't giving up. They're getting more aggressive. Suho pulled up another display. I've been analyzing the pattern of rift formations. They're not random. They're all pointing back to a single location in deep space outside our galaxy. A source point? Hana moved closer to examine the data. More than that. I think it's their origin. The place where their dimension connects to ours most strongly. Suho's fingers flew across the controls. If we could reach it, study it, maybe we could seal it permanently. That would require sending a probe through one of the rifts, Hana said slowly. Into their dimension. We don't know what's on the other side. Then we find out. Suho looked at her with determination. Because if we don't, this war never ends. The plan was presented to President Minji and the military command. It was dangerous, possibly suicidal. They would need to modify a probe to survive in a dimension with different physical laws. They would need someone brave enough to pilot it. Lieutenant Bora volunteered immediately. She was young, brilliant, and had lost her family to a Void-rendered attack on one of the first colonies to fall. I'll do it, she said simply. We need answers. I'll get them. The modified probe was ready within a month. It was equipped with the most advanced sensors humanity could build, reality stabilizers to protect it from dimensional stress, and a quantum communicator to send data back in real time. Bora sat in the pilot's seat running final checks. Admiral Taeyong stood beside her. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "We can find another way." "No, sir," Bora replied. "We can't. This is the only way forward." "I'm ready." The largest rift, located near what used to be Battle Station Kepler-19, was selected as the entry point. The human defense fleet formed a protective perimeter as Bora's probe approached the tear in space. Entering the rift in 3, 2, 1, the probe disappeared into the impossible geometry. For a moment, silence. Then data began streaming back. What it showed shocked everyone. On the other side was a universe dying. Stars were going dark. Matter was breaking down. The physical laws that held reality together were failing. And in that dying universe lived the void, rendered desperate and afraid. Bora's voice came through, strained but clear. "They're not invading. They're fleeing. Their entire universe is collapsing. They're trying to escape into ours because it's the only way to survive." Back on Earth, Suho stared at the data in disbelief. Everything they had assumed was wrong. The void rendered weren't monsters. They were refugees. Desperate refugees who didn't understand that their method of entry was destroying the lives they were trying to reach. "Can we stabilize their universe?" President Minji asked. Dr. Hana examined the data Bora was sending. "Maybe. The collapse is caused by dimensional energy bleeding away. If we could create anchors to hold their reality together, reinforce the failing physical laws, it would take massive amounts of energy and technology we've never tested at this scale. But it's possible? Theoretically, yes. But it would require cooperation. Our technology and their understanding of their own dimension. We'd have to work together." The decision was made quickly. Humanity sent a message through the rift. Not a weapon, but a communication. "We understand your universe is dying. We can help. But you must stop attacking. We must work together." The response was slow in coming. The void rendered didn't communicate the way humans did. But eventually something changed. The attack stopped. The rifts remained open, but no more void rendered came through. Then carefully a single void rendered approached a human ship. It was massive, its geometry still painful to look at, but it made no aggressive moves. Through complex mathematical patterns it tried to communicate. Engineer Ji-hoon, working with alien linguists who had joined the effort, managed to decode the message. "They're willing to try. They're afraid, but they're willing to trust us." The plan that followed was the most ambitious engineering project in history. Humanity would build dimensional stabilizers, massive structures that could reinforce the fabric of reality itself. The void rendered would provide guidance on their universe's specific physical laws. Other council species, grateful for humanity's help, contributed resources and labor. It took months. The work was dangerous. Several teams were lost to dimensional instabilities, but slowly progress was made. The first stabilizer was completed and activated near the largest rift. The effect was immediate. The rift stabilized. On the other side, in the dying universe, matter stopped breaking down. Stars stopped going dark. The collapse slowed. "It's working," Suho reported, his voice filled with wonder. "We're actually doing it. We're saving an entire universe." More stabilizers were built. More rifts were reinforced and transformed from wounds between dimensions into stable bridges. The void rendered stopped being invaders and became partners in the greatest rescue operation ever attempted. Lieutenant Bora returned from her missions into the dying universe, her probe battered but functional. She had mapped the entire dimension, identified the key points where stabilizers were needed. Her data made the difference between success and failure. 6 months after the first stabilizer activated, the last one came online. The dying universe was stable. The void rendered would survive. And they understood now what they had done, the lives they had taken in their desperate attempt to escape. Through their mathematical communication, they expressed something humanity recognized as profound sorrow and gratitude. Then carefully they withdrew back to their universe. The rifts remained stable but quiet. The war was over. The toll was counted. 40 billion council citizens dead, thousands of human soldiers lost, entire worlds scarred by the conflict. But it was over, and 2 universes had survived. 5 years passed. The Galactic Council reformed, this time with humanity not just as members but as leaders in the rebuilding effort. The new council charter was written with input from every species, including representatives from the Void Rendered, who had learned to communicate more effectively. Ambassador Hyunwoo stood in the new council chamber, built on the ruins of the old. Around him sat representatives from 20 species now, including the Void Rendered. The charter was read aloud, translated into every language. No species shall be expelled without unanimous consent. All members have equal voting rights. All voices will be heard. We unite not because we must, but because we choose to. We stand together, different but equal. The vote was unanimous. On New Busan, Governor Ji-won returned to the colony she had evacuated years before. Beside her walked Draxian engineers, learning human construction methods. The colony was reopening as a joint settlement, human and alien working side by side. Governor, the first group of colonists is arriving, her aide reported. Ji-won smiled. Good, we have a lot of work to do. Let's make this place a home for everyone. In orbit around Draxia Prime, Captain Sunmi commanded a mixed crew of humans and aliens. Her ship patrolled the dimensional barriers, monitoring the stabilizers, ensuring the peace held. Human and Draxian officers worked together at their stations. The old conflicts forgotten? Admiral Taeyong had retired, returning to Earth. But his legacy lived on in the fleet he had built and the soldiers he had trained. The human defense fleet was now the Galactic Defense Fleet, and it protected everyone equally. Chief Engineer Suho visited the research station Prometheus 7, now reopened and bustling with activity. Human and alien scientists worked together on new projects. The Void Rendered had shared their understanding of dimensional physics, and the breakthroughs were incredible. Sir, a young Draxian researcher approached nervously. I'm having trouble with the quantum calculations. Could you help? Suho smiled. Of course. Let's take a look together. At the Council Museum, a new exhibit had opened. It was dedicated to the war and the peace that followed. At the center of the exhibit sat the red button from Series 9, preserved in a clear case. Beneath it, a plaque written in every council language. This button nearly destroyed us all. We preserve it not as a trophy but as a reminder. The most dangerous weapon in the universe is not technology. It's arrogance. It's fear. It's pride that blinds us to the value of others. We keep this button here so we never forget what it cost to push away those who would help us. A young alien child stood before the exhibit, her parent beside her. Why did the humans come back? She asked. After the council sent them away? The parent, a survivor of the siege of Draxia Prime, looked down at his child with gentle eyes. Because that's what humans do. They leave when asked. They fight when needed. They forgive when it matters. They showed us that being strong isn't about having the biggest weapons. It's about choosing to help even when you have every right to walk away.